Happy Saturday morning, everybody. Today is June 30th, the last day of June 2018, which means we are officially 3/8 of the way through the Trump presidency. So give yourself a pat on the back. We really didn't think we'd make it this far. This is Left is Law, devoted leftist resistance delivering the daily knowledge you need to be informed and create change. I'm Ryan. Let's break this down. Before we get too deep in today's episode, I want to thank everybody who has subscribed to our YouTube channel, our podcast, and I just wanted to send a call out for feedback. Things that you don't like about the show, things you want to hear more of, things you don't need as much. To this point, I've only been making episodes on a single topic, and we're going to keep doing this, but there is more often a lot of things going on in a day, so I'm going to briefly touch on some updates before going into our main story. So last week I told you about the Red Hen restaurant that Sarah Huckabee Sanders was kicked out of, and I told you that some of the White House ethics people who have done this work for a while said that tweet was probably illegal, it's probably going to cause death threats, and sure enough, it did. In fact, Red Hens all across the country that were not even involved in the removal of Sarah Sanders have been receiving death threats. There was a group of protesters that came outside of the real Red Hen restaurant, and this is my personal favorite. You can't make this shit up. Some guy literally picked up chicken shit and flung chicken shit at the restaurant. So Trump supporters in 2018 are resorting to flinging chicken shit. So keep an eye out there. On a more serious note, Italy recently started clearing migrant camps after the far-right government who was elected there has officially taken hold, and they are now trying to conduct a new national census. And we have to keep an eye on this. This is part of a growing wave of fascism and anti-immigration in Europe. And Italy in particular is becoming a place which could be very scary very soon. All across the country this morning, there are calls for removing ICE and against Trump's immigration policies. There are protests in many different cities, and it seems that there is finally a transition happening. It took Donald Trump to make it happen, but as politics is always a pendulum, we're now swinging back the other way, and things that were previously considered the radical left are now setting the tone for mainstream politics. Remember that ICE operations were temporarily shut down in Portland last week, although I just learned when I was Googling this and getting my source that those protesters were arrested and they reopened that facility using riot gear, which is unacceptable. So the bright side, though, is that as of late, a lot more progressive ideas from places like Portland, Seattle, New York are getting picked up and ran with. And this means that maybe Democrats are finally going to realize that being a lousy moderate does not win elections. You could just ask Ocasio-Cortez about that. Hey. Let's get to the main story. Trump has announced a meeting with yet another dictator, Russian President Vladimir Putin. What amazes me about this is how he is willing to praise these leaders like Kim Jong-un, like Vladimir Putin, who do absolutely despicable things. He infamously called and congratulated Putin on his March victory, even though there were questions of its legitimacy, especially in light of the jailing and silencing of his political opponents. We know for a fact that Russia attempted to rig our elections. Donald Trump has time and again downplayed this as no big deal. In fact, I have a direct quotation from him here where he says, "Russia continues to say they had nothing to do with meddling in our election. Where is the DNC server? And why didn't shady James B. Comey and the now disgraced FBI agents take and closely examine it? Why isn't Hillary and Russia being looked at? So many questions, so much corruption." Literally deflecting it onto United States citizens over foreign individuals who literally rigged the election. We know for a fact that Russia kills journalists. And rather than addressing this, it almost seems as if Donald Trump writes it off as a legitimate method of dealing with fake news. We know that Russia annexed Crimea, and rather than criticize Russia for that, guess what Trump did earlier this week? He literally blamed Barack Obama. How much can a person blame Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton for? I am starting to get amused at this point. We're a year and a half into his presidency, and he's still blaming them for literally everything. His divorces, his insecurity, Eric Trump. In all seriousness, This man frequently rebukes and criticizes our allies and countries who respect human rights, and it seems like the only way to get any respect out of him is to rule with an iron fist and to undermine the most important tenets of democracy. I want to read this paragraph that I found from the New York Times about the concern that some of our Russia experts have over the meeting and Trump's general attitude. Both men have sought to undermine institutions they see as threatening or disloyal, encourage suspicion of anyone scrutinizing their actions, belittled opponents for tactical advantage, embrace the value of a spectacle, and question the benefit of international institutions they have portrayed as working against their country's interests. The way I see it, there is a recurring and horrifying trend of promoting the worst of the worst. Keep in mind that in this country now, Kim Jong-un has a higher approval rating amongst Republicans than Nancy Pelosi does. And that should not even surprise us anymore. Look to what he said about the Russia meddling earlier. If a menacing and grave abuser of human rights says he's telling the truth, we should believe him over our own FBI director, over our own major party presidential candidate. And all of this rhetoric ultimately becomes concerning because they have a lot of big topics on their plate. Trump has already said that he wants to talk about everything. So that's Crimea, Ukraine, Syria, elections. And once again, we find ourselves with Donald Trump at the forefront of some of the most pressing issues of our time. And it is difficult, in light of the way he's talking about it now, for us to see a positive resolution, for us to see Donald Trump walking into a meeting with Vladimir Putin in 2 weeks and being able to make serious change or any change, or for that matter, even move in a positive direction with Vladimir Putin, if this is his attitude going in. We're going to wait and we're going to find out, and I'm going to be there with you. Thank you for tuning in to Left is Law. We'll see you tomorrow.